Hi, this is Jackie's Reading Room, and I'm your host, Jackie P. Have you turned some pages today? From World War II stories to ancient Greece, historical fiction novels really make you travel in time and place. As a matter of fact, on the website for masterclass.com, the definition goes like this, and I quote: historical fiction is a literary genre where the story takes place in the past. Historical novels capture the details of the time period as accurately as possible for authenticity, including social norms, manners, customs, and traditions. Many novels in this genre tell fictional stories that involve actual historical figures or historical events. I find that I learn a lot when I read this genre, and I find that it's very enjoyable. When I was young, I always loved history class. I've always loved to learn about how people lived in a certain time. And it really makes me want to travel when I read a novel that takes place, let's say, in a city that has a building that still exists today. I would love to go there. So today, I would like to tell you about that genre that is called historical fiction. One of the recent historical novels that I read is entitled The Personal Librarian. It was written by Mary Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. It came out in 2021. And this book is based on the story of Belle de Costa Green. She was JP Morgan's personal librarian. Now, this woman was a Black American, and you can imagine that at the time, this is, quite some time ago, she could not be who she was completely if she wanted to have the kind of position that she wanted to have. So she had to hide who she really was, pass for Portuguese, right? Because her complexion was white enough that she could pass for Portuguese, so that she could actually have like such a great career. And we're actually quite happy that she. Well, I don't know if we're happy about that because she could not be 100% who she really was, but because she did this, still today, if you go to New York City, you can go to the JP Morgan Library and find out about all these rare manuscripts that Belle de Costa Green was able to find. She went around the world to find the very rare copy of the book for J.P. Morgan. Um, I have to say, when I read that book, I really felt like I was in that world, and the way they described the dresses, the lush parties, and the kind of life that she had to live, all the while trying to, you know, pretend to be someone that she was not. So, must have been extremely difficult. But I really enjoyed that. So if you want to pick that up, I think it's a great example of what historical fiction is. Now, the masterclass.com website gives you 5 common elements of historical fiction. So let me tell you what they are. The first one is the setting. It's actually the most important part or aspect because um, it has to be set in an authentic period in history, in real historical places. So um, you could write, for example, or read a book that takes place in France after World War II. So it would have to reflect that time and place, right? The second uh, element is the plot. It can be a combination of real and fictional events, and that's where it's really interesting. I feel like you're learning some of the history without having to read an actual book on the topic, like a nonfiction title on the topic. And you usually have, characters who meet, and obviously, sometimes, characters who fall in love, just like in. One of the most recent books I read called Bluebird by Canadian best-selling author Genevieve Graham. And this book takes place in Windsor, Ontario, right at the time of the Prohibition era, so 1920s. And so you have a nurse, um, so they were called the Bluebirds, hence the title, who went to the front, met this wounded soldier, and then they find each other again in Canada. But during that period of time, so it was a very interesting book, and the setting and the plot very well done in that book in terms of recreating the era. The third element is characters. They can be real, they can be fictional, or a mix of both, but they should obviously speak and behave according to the era in which the story is set. So, Adele, the main character in Bluebird, was a nurse who went to the front, came back, and is having to readjust to life in Canada after the war. But as a woman of her era, she's expected to marry. So I thought the dilemma, but she also loves her job. So I thought that that was very well done as to um, what women had the chance to do, and obviously it's very different from today. So for me, that's extremely interesting because it's a bit of our history too. If you've ever read other books by Genevieve Graham, she actually takes events from Canadian history and put them into novels, and it's usually super interesting. Fourth element is the dialogue. Obviously, it has to be authentic and reflect the period, the status of the character, right? So, a lower class person, let's say, if the story takes place on the Titanic. Would be different from somebody who was, in first class. And finally, the conflict. Those problems that the characters encounter should be actual conflicts that could happen at the time, right? Um, I remember that there's a point in Bluebird where Adele is on the train and she has to deal with one of the porters on the train, and she is made aware that they are all called George because it was kind of a way to make them anonymous, which I thought was extremely sad because it meant that these men, usually men of color, on those trains were kind of these forgettable people, or these people that they wanted to make forgettable. So that was extremely well done. So those five elements are usually found in historical novels. I was looking at some statistics because I know that when I go to the library or the bookstore, I see a lot of titles that seem to be related to historical fiction, and I am correct. So from the website booknetcanada.ca, I have some 2021 facts that historical fiction is one of the top read categories by Canadian readers. As a matter of fact, it's the third most popular fiction category after mystery, thrillers, and science fiction. I was a bit surprised with science fiction because I can enjoy some science fiction once in a while, but I know that many people do not enjoy that. So I was surprised that it was actually before historical fiction. 32% of books in print and 28% of ebooks were historical fiction titles read by Canadians in 2020. So I thought that was quite interesting. A few more titles that I like to point out that I read and enjoyed in the last few years. Um, so in 2020, two books came out. Another one by Genevieve Graham called The Forgotten Home Child. If you have not read that, be warned. It is sad. You might have to take out your box of tissues. And it's about the British home children who were orphaned or abandoned children in England, and they were sent, to several countries like Australia and Canada. But they were usually abused and treated very poorly. So very a beautiful story. Emma Donoghue is an Irish Canadian writer, and one of her latest is called The Pull of the Stars, and it takes place during the 1918 flu pandemic in Ireland. And this book really broke my heart. There's beautiful writing in it. You may know Emma Donoghue from her novel Room. She's written quite a few actually, but to me, The Pull of the Stars was a very, very profound and beautiful book. And finally, a few years back, I read this novel called Loving Frank. That was published in 2008, written by Nancy Horn. And Loving Frank is about, I guess, a part of Frank Lloyd Wright's life, and the woman that he spent um, quite a bit of time with, who was not his wife. Anyway, and it's actually quite a tragic story. I'm not going to tell you actually what happened. I did not know the real story behind this, but when I got to the end, I was quite shocked. Very beautifully written, and you can really feel that setting with the architecture, that's involved with Frank Lloyd Wright. So um, it's extremely easy to find some good historical fiction titles. Once again, of course, I want to encourage you to go to your local library. And if you want to treat yourself to a book that you want to purchase, go to your local bookstore and check them out. There will certainly be some titles that you will enjoy. Take care, and I hope that you turn some pages, and I will see you very soon.